Is this normal, though? We've had an election about 6 or 7 months ago, and we're already hearing talks of a cabinet shuffle. Like, is that normal for this type of situation of a minority government?
3 cabinet shuffles in a year? No, it's not normal. It's actually quite disruptive.
You may have seen her, maybe not. She has been an incredible powerhouse behind the scenes. She has been on talk radio, has done shows that you may have seen, just dominating the political spectrum here in Canada. Has worked for the Prime Minister of Canada, the Mayor of Toronto, done so much, giving so much more, and has so much value to add. This is the amazing, the unreal Amanda Galbraith. Happy to have you on the show. How are you holding up?
I'm great, Josh. With that introduction, I'm going to come back every week. That's fantastic. Thank you.
You are more than welcome, my friend. You are more than welcome, because the one thing I really enjoy about you and what I've seen about you is the fact that you tell it how it is. And one of the things that really caught my eye was you were recently on an interview on the Hub with Sean Spear along with David Coletto, talking about the politics that happened a couple weeks ago with Mr. Pierre Poilievre and the floor crosser, and everyone saying, Pierre Poilievre, he's just not able to do this anymore. It's all over. And you said, all right, conservative right, shut up. You know, I'm tired of hearing this. And you have a very interesting perspective on why you think Pierre Poilievre is the guy moving forward, and would love to hear your perspective on why that is.
Yeah, I have a real problem with the idea that Conservative Party is a one and done party, right? And a one and done movement. And I think, that's probably because I was there. I was a baby staffer, but I volunteered on the Stephen Harper leadership campaign. I was there for the merging of the two parties. I was there as part of that. And I remember being in opposition in his office when I remember there's a Chantal Hébert column that was like the nail in the coffin of Stephen Harper's political career. He's done. He will never be elected. And he was also winning no beauty pageants around, hey, I want to go for dinner with this guy. But at the end of the day, Canadians took a look at what the Conservatives had to offer, and they chose him. And I think he's one of our most successful prime ministers. I'm incredibly proud to work for him, have worked for him. And I think he had one kick at the can, lost, but fought them to a minority government. Then he had a second kick at the can and he won. And the idea that we kind of eat our own every single time. And I do appreciate, I'm an aggressive person, so I do appreciate a movement that wants to win and pushes each other around that. But at some point we have to stop eating our own. And I think we have to say, okay, our leaders should be able to grow into the role, to mature into the role. I think you saw that a lot with Harper. I think you've seen that with Pierre Poilievre, who also is somebody that I've been around in politics for 2 decades. I used to work for John Baird as our parliamentary secretary at the time. I've seen him come up as a real political athlete. So I think as a movement, we owe it to ourselves to allow our leaders to give it a shot. And I think this idea that we eat our own and we kind of fight each other the whole way through. We're own worst enemies. We should turn the guns on the other people, not ourselves.
I understand that. And actually, I'm curious if your perspective would change if the Carney, if Carney was able to somehow scratch and claw his way to a majority somehow, some way, in some weird fashion, and he locks in for another 3 years here, would you have the same perspective that, Poilievre's the guy moving forward into another election?
I think it would be tough for him to stay regardless, because I just can't imagine the DNA of our party letting someone hang around for 3 years as the leader if they've lost lots. Truly, it would be immaterial on my thoughts, because I think that decision would be made. I also do think it would allow the party time and space to reflect on, what do we need or want, or how do we work it out. But I do think Pierre very much would be an excellent prime minister. I think he's built a movement for the party that to me is significant, right? I asked young people in my office, I was like we just were chatting. I'm like, well, who are you going to vote for? They're like, oh, we're voting Conservative. And I remember being a member of the Carleton University Conservative Campus Club, and there was 12 of us. I was the only girl. It was not a thing that people did. But now they're seeing conservatism as symbolic, with fighting for people who feel like they're outside of the system, that they can't get a shot at housing, that they just can't, no matter how hard they work, they're not going to be able to pay, ends meet. A lot of the young people in my office, we're in Toronto, we're downtown Union Station, because they're commuting in on the GO train from the suburbs. They can't do the thing where they have the small apartment downtown and that sort of thing. So I like that we actually are part. He's built a movement among young people around folks that never before voted for us. And the funny part about that is the trade-off is we've lost boomers. And fair enough, they're a very motivated voting bloc. But the idea that we've expanded our base, to me, for the first time in a generation is exciting. And I think we should actually explore what that means as a party, as a movement, and that comes with Pierre. Like, he's truly built a popularity beyond traditional conservatism, and I think that is worth an exploration and some time to spend.
I hear that. And I think that was the thing I find the most interesting is how impactful he's been. And it's clear the Liberals have made note of that because, well, they seem to be pulling a lot of tricks, a lot of backhanded moments and situations to just try to get him out. If they liked him so much and he was such a bad leader and bad for politics, I would imagine they want to keep him in so they keep winning. No? Is that how we're feeling about this?
I mean, you talk to some of the Liberals and they say, like, I think they donate to his leadership campaign if they could. I think they do feel like Mark Carney stacked against Pierre Poilievre, it's a good matchup for the two of them, right? And there's also just thing about politics, it's the devil you know. He's beat him already. And because Prime Minister Carney he's crowding Poilievre out on the right and taking, like, the pipeline MOU announcement. We've done away with feminist foreign policy. I like to play a game, imagine a conservative said it. Like, we'd be into 6 weeks of media firestorms if we said shit like that. But here we are. So I think the Liberals like the matchup against Pierre Poilievre. That's fine for me. I still don't think that negates a lot of his positive. It just means, as a party, if we're not able to counterbalance our political movement, some of his weaknesses, which I think again are appealing to women, the need for kind of a bit of a softening, which you see a little bit with his family, then that's where you bring in other members of your party. Like, they've got lots of stars in the front bench there, or in the middle bench, or whatever. People like Michelle Rempel-Garner, people like Melissa Lantsman, people like Shuv, they've got a huge caucus there that I think could really round out the offering. And, Doug Ford in 2018, everyone said, oh, he's too risky. We can't, like, that was the big thing. Well, could Doug Ford really be premier? So all of a sudden you see all these photo ops of him with Christine Elliott and Carolyn Mulroney and Peter Bethlenfalvy and all the kind of the stalwarts of his government. And I think saying, hey, this is our government in waiting is a way to answer back to that and kind of, I think, appeal to a broader base.
I think that's fair. And we'll shift the focus off of the Conservative Party because, well, they're not the ones in power. Imagine that, a whole firestorm around the party who's not doing anything aside from holding the government accountable. We are hearing rumblings currently of different MPs not being happy with where the direction of the current Liberal Party is going. It's going maybe too close to the center for some, at least those who are on the more further left of the party. And people are hearing that there might be people who are just disappear. They'll just, I'm not into this anymore. Nate Erskine-Smith obviously was very vocal of like, don't really like this budget, but Team Carney, I guess. And so that was where we're at. But now we're hearing rumors that, well, Melanie Joly may be on her way to France and going to take on an ambassador role or something along those lines out there. Is this all a sign that there is a fracturing of relationships in the party, or is just this the natural go of things for a governing party of this stature?
It might be a little bit of both. Even though it's Canada's new government, which, although, by the way, we used to say in the early days of Harper, and the bureaucrats would go crazy. And I remember Control F in government of Canada. So every time they say it, it makes me laugh. But it's Canada's new government. It is, in fact, a government headed by a new prime minister full of all the same people that have been there for over a decade, right? So those people are tired. They also represent, I think, a lot of the policies of the past. And you've seen a lot of them, I think, shift to the volume and the velocity that this current prime minister works at. This is a very different functioning government internally on how they do things. So I think some of these folks have put their hand up and said, hey, like, I'm for the feminist foreign policy, the more environmentally oriented foreign policy, to your point, much more of a left-leaning government. This is not what I signed up for. They're also not, I think, moving in lockstep with the PM, I guess, in a way that he would like. So it makes sense for him to offload some of those cabinet ministers. It's common to do that. It's unusual that, like, they'd get a fourth term, and you're doing this with pretty senior, high-profile folks. But, like, the Joly rumors have been around for a little while. I heard them a couple months ago and then told, it wasn't happening. The Guilbeault rumors are the same. And again, he's a very strong environmentalist. Would not be in line, my guess, with an MOU around pipelines. So I think some of it is natural, but I think it also shows that certainly, yes, the prime minister and how he's pursuing things, I think, as a government of one, is signaling that the positions that some of his senior cabinet members are not aligned with where he's going. And those folks will find very soft and cushy jobs in other places, which all governments do it as much as it will annoy and irritate some folks, and probably make some space for folks that are much more like-minded, like a Tim Hodgson, or much more private sector oriented is what kind of how he's looking.
Well, I guess as long as they're not ending up on a yacht with Katy Perry, I think people are going to end up living
in
with
jeans. Who wears jeans on a yacht? Anyway.
Only Justin Trudeau. Only Justin Trudeau. But yeah, I do hear you on that. Especially, that's kind of the rumblings I also heard about Chrystia Freeland going off to the UK too, where it's just like, after everything we've seen, of course, she's going to get this sweet job over in the UK. But I guess we just have to swallow it and deal with it at this point in time. Then I guess like that brings me back down to more of the question around, is this normal though? Like, we've had an election about 6 or 7 months ago, and we're already hearing talks of a cabinet shuffle. Like, is that normal for this type of situation of a minority government?
3 cabinet shuffles in a year, no, is not normal. It's actually quite disruptive. And I can say this as somebody who's been a staffer going through shuffles and also works with organizations who are trying to talk to government. And shuffles happen, basically all work stops, you get new ministers, everything kind of gets and you don't know where your policy is going to be at. Is it going to be scrapped? Like, the actual functioning of government stops. So it is intensely disruptive. I think it unfocuses the government. Interestingly, like, I think most prime ministers, if there was a Pierre Poilievre government in place or a Justin Trudeau government in place and they had 3 shuffles in a year, we'd be saying they're disorganized, they're a mess, they're whatever. But because the current PM, I think, has this real echo of increasingly shrinking, but I still think this trust that, he knows what he's doing. People sort of look the other way when this stuff happens. But I think it remains, it's highly disruptive. It's highly unusual. And I think it will be disruptive to the government. And I think anybody else would probably be criticized for it, but I think he'll likely get away with it. Particularly if he has a couple, as the rumors are expected that there will be some kind of mass omnibus sort of by-election that happens, and he'll get a couple stars running in those ridings, and people will just look at that instead.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm gathering too myself. Is I'm hearing in these rumblings, even the caucus are like, I might just, if another election happens in the next, 6 to 8 months, I'm just not going to run under the Liberal banner again, and it won't be made a huge deal. But we even saw the lack of organization even at the start of this government, where I think it would took 3 weeks to a month for some people to even get offices in Parliament, and it wasn't looking very good. And this is another iteration of that. It's like, well, he knows what he's doing. He's Mr. Brookfield, he's been around the world, of course. So I do then bring it back down to this issue: is how does messaging work around this for the Conservative Party, where, you mentioned it there, no one's really going to be looking, they're willing to look the other way on this because, it's Mark Carney. Where should the focus be for the Conservative Party at this point in time?
Squarely on issues that actually matter to people. So most folks don't care who the finance minister is or the health minister is or the public safety minister is. Like, I care and you care and your listeners care, but most folks are running around trying to figure out how to pay the mortgage and the groceries and get their kids to school or finish get to their job on time. So I would say squarely focus on affordability issues, which are still top of mind. I would push hard on the housing stuff. I think there's lots of space there for them to go, in crime and safety. I would just say you really focus on those pocketbook issues, because and I wrote an op-ed in the Sun about this, what the Conservatives need is time and patience. Shooting at the Prime Minister about his 3rd cabinet shuffle or international trips, it may be satisfying, but I actually don't think it matters to everyday Canadians. It's not really making much of a dent. Whereas I think as people see increasingly the quality of life continue to go down, the economy's not getting better. It's not going to get any better anytime soon, unfortunately. And that's going to be hard on the government in power, right? And when the Prime Minister continues to elevate expectations and under-deliver on them, those consequences will be held, right? And we can hold his feet to the fire of those things. So I would say keep pushing your message, keep focused on that. Let Ottawa be Ottawa, and wait 6 months, 8 months, and then I think you'll see it'll start to shift quite a bit around a different. And if it's not shifting, and then I think that is actually a time for us to say as a party, okay, is where you're in here, is this the right path forward for us as a party? But I think to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater now, just because things are a little rocky, to me, is silly. And also, it was inevitable that we were going to have some floor crossings, given the expectations, given the size of the minority government. I would be shocked if that wasn't something that happened. I think it's good that it happened as early as it did.
I genuinely am interested as we kind of move forward here too with what's happening with the MOU with Alberta. What was your take on this whole thing and the relationship between the premiers, especially the news that broke today with Scott Moe or the Saskatchewan essentially going around BC and opening up a port in Washington state instead of opening up a potash port in BC? Like, where do you see this relationship going? What's happening there, you feel like?
I mean, I think it's a tough spot for David Eby to be, right? Like I think he's in some tough political waters domestically in BC. Very clearly now, interestingly, the prime minister's aligned, I think, with national public opinion, and even you could some argue like the plurality of public opinion in British Columbia that they recognize the need for these sorts of projects. And he's sort of the skunk at the garden party to a certain extent nationally. And how he stick handles that. I mean, maybe it's a good place for him to find fighting for British Columbians that'll motivate his base. But, at the end of the day, it's bigger than one province. It's about the entire country moving forward. I also will give props to the prime minister. Like it may be like I call it kind of a Nixon goes to China moment. It would be tough for a conservative PM to get something like that. Like it can be done, but it's tougher to get that politically over the line. Whereas it's easier for like a liberal with a strong conservative opposition being supportive to say, we're going to sign this MOU, we're going to push for this at the expense of BC. How that maps out electorally for them, I'll be fascinated in the next election campaign. But I think it's a good thing for the country. Some folks are arguing it's a PR exercise and it's $30 million that flies like just to plan something that'll never happen. But I think it's a good thing. I think it puts EB in a difficult spot. And yeah, you see Saskatchewan said fine. But like, by the way, a pipeline not in our country is still a pipeline outside of our jurisdiction that we do not control. And that is not the answer to our energy security challenges, especially with the direction that the U.S. government is going in and the increasingly authoritarian, autocratic approach to how they do things there, right? I think that's a real risk. We actually need this infrastructure in Canada, not in other jurisdictions.
That's the part I thought was the most interesting to me. I do agree with the point of, all right, the whole thing was diversify. Let's build things and infrastructure in our country, and let's not continue to rely on the United States and give them more leverage over us. And then they did the same thing with this particular project. But does that really show how dysfunctional our relationships across provinces has been for a long, long time? And then just highlights that we just saw 6-7 months ago, everyone was elbows up, Team Canada, yelling at Danielle Smith for even so much as talking to Donald Trump. And now it's like, hey, we don't want your pipeline. We're not working with you. And now Scott Moe just said, okay, we're going back to the States. All right, we're not going to work with you. Does that just show the dysfunction across our country at this point?
I think it's natural tensions as we are designed as a country, right? And the different, we're big. We're a big country with, and I haven't traveled the whole country, but folks from Alberta, they're amazing to meet and get to know, are very different from the people of Ontario. That's also why I say, like, when you try and port the governing, some people talk about Premier Ford as the leader of the Conservative Party. I'm like, what is an Ontario coalition? It's a very different coalition naturally. Those two things do not cross very easily. So I think it is natural tensions, which is where, a strong prime minister early in his mandate who is willing to put some political capital and half behind these projects, because that's like the courts have ruled, like the federal government has national jurisdiction over these projects, right? It's not just for BC to say no. So I think it's part of what makes Canada interesting and a challenging place to govern, but a place that I kind of love to see politically. It's similar in the States, right? States fight with each other all the time. They don't have the need for kind of a national cohesion the way that we do here in Canada. So it doesn't give me great pause because I don't think there's like a BC separatist movement anytime soon. But I do think it's important that we pressure test and have these conversations. But I think it's increasingly also important is if you were elected to build and get this country moving and talking about pipelines and you've got the political capital to do it, you should do it. So I think it's good that the prime minister is leaning into that. I hope he finishes the job.
Yeah, and I agree. I think if I'm being honest, just knowing his background and some of his more business related interests, I'm stunned that it's gone this far at this point. I think that is a credit to a degree to Danielle Smith and her leadership to be able to get it to this point. Like when you're dealing with David Eby on one side and trying to work with the federal government who loves emission caps and keeping the tanker ban in place and all of this, that's tough to work with. And the fact that we even got to this point, even though some it's like, well, MOU is just symbolic, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, well, you still got to this point and it can still go forward. And I think that is a testament to leadership and her trying to make this happen.
Yeah, listen, I think she's a very impressive politician. I've interviewed her a couple of times on my radio show. She always comes on if she can when I ask, which I, always give credit to politicians that do that. They all don't do that. And I think she is, I've said this on air a few times, like I think of all of the leaders dealing with President Trump, she sort of had her eye on the ball from day one. And in fact, if you look at the go down and play nice with him and whatever, it's the exact same playbook the prime minister is using now, that she was criticized, as your point, for very heavily in early days when we were all, when Trudeau was slapping on tariffs and all these sorts of things. And she said, no, we're going to do it this way. She got a better deal. And I think she continues to be one of the savviest, most intelligent politicians in this country.
For sure. And last question, just out of curiosity for you, we kind of go back to budget week, or sorry, not budget week, actually, when they were voting on the budget and all the kind of weird shenanigans and theatrics that took place during that vote. It was, I talked about it on my show. I was expecting that budget to pass. There's no way that wasn't going to pass unless something seriously went wrong. I was just more so interested in what was going to happen, what party was going to do this, what going to pull. And we saw the NDP did what they did, the Conservatives did what they did. And it was just like, well, that was fast. Not the way I thought we were going to get there, but we ended up getting there. What stunned me the most, because I live streamed this, was seeing the reaction in my live chat of everyone expecting this budget to fall. They really believed that this was going to fall. And I was stunned by the reaction. I was like, whoa. How? And then it just hit me. I started going through all the media, even the Conservative Party, and the party's talking about how tough they're going to act and they're going to vote this down. I was like, okay, I think I can understand where that messaging definitely got crossed, where people truly believe that this was going to go down. What is your reaction to that reaction? And people were very, when it happened, the conservative right was very upset with the party when this budget went through.
I think, they certainly broadcast, right, for fundraising purposes. Sometimes they're like, oh, the government's going to fall any day. You better donate $25 for our re-election campaign. Obviously, you never want to take the base of your party for granted. But I would just say this to folks who really are eager to have another kick at the can, is an election today would be litigate the exact same issues we had 6 months ago. And that's the exact same equation that's going to happen. And we might probably get to the point where I would think it would yield a Liberal majority, because the Conservatives and Liberals will be very tight. The NDP have $0. Like, they haven't even gotten their refunds yet for the last election campaign. They have nowhere to run. They can't get planes. Like there's a lot of logistics to why this can't happen. But just from a political equation perspective, is the ball hasn't moved far enough away from the U.S. as an existential threat that makes it, I think, a winnable field for us. So it's all fine and good that we make lots of noises about it, but you really want to, the nice thing about a minority government is, in theory, you can pick the turf with which you fight the election. And to refight the last one, to me, would be utterly foolish. And I think also, and that's it, right? So I think that would be dumb I understand why they might be disappointed, but I thought it would be very foolish for us to defeat the government on that. And the Prime Minister knew that, right? Because he made zero effort whatsoever to get it. Like, in a way I've never, I was like watching, he's just like, I'm going to muscle through. You guys are just going to figure it out. Like, there was no care, which is kind of cool, but also like shocking for Ottawa. And I think worked this time, but the longer he's in office, I don't think that is going to work.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You can get away with it in terms of that time frame. Any longer, even 3-4 months from now, that's not passing, and it'll get very interesting very quickly if he doesn't decide to start realizing to be someone who governs inside of a minority government and be someone who can unite the parliament instead of blaming the opposition for all his problems when he's the one who's supposed to be working on it. So I do appreciate your perspective and your time. I know you're very busy, but thank you so much. And I know my listeners really appreciate your input.
Thanks so much, Josh, for having me and giving me the chance to talk to your listeners. I look forward to listening to more podcast.
Absolutely. No problem. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Getting drunk from 7 to 3. Overindulging, flash like it's free.